Most of you in this room I've met at one point or another in my career, so I think in this audience it's not like a 1,000-person audience, so I'm going to try to be pretty brief so we can open it up to questions, because I think the questions are more interesting, plus I don't have to get the questions cleared, and I have to get the talking points cleared before I speak. But you know, what isn't revealed in my official bio is that I'm kind of a space geek from many years in the industry. In fact, when I was working with DFI, we started a space practice. Some of you know about it, but one of the first things we were asked to do was to look for the financial community. We're working mostly for banks. We're looking at the small launch vehicle market. Was there a market for new entrants? This is back in the early 90s. And that led us to what's the market for the actual product? What's the small satellite market look like? And how many of you remember the terms big LEO and little LEO? Remember, this is, yeah, now we're dating ourselves, right? So when we had the big LEOs there back in the 90s, it was, you know, the industry looked very different. It was there was going to be a huge commercial demand, and the Department of Defense, in this case the national security apparatus of the Department of Defense, was truly going to be a small player, was not going to be a big player in this market because the commercial market was huge. So I was hired, I was retained by a bunch of financial institutions up in New York to look at the big LEO, little LEO market. And it's awfully hard to figure out because you're trying to figure out demand. And you're trying to figure out what people are willing to pay for that demand. But I'm a big market guy, and this is the theme I want to take away, hopefully everyone takes away today. Markets work if we let them work. We looked at all of the I think it was then 27 between the big and small LEOs, and we couldn't figure out who's going to make it, who's not. I mean, who is Iridium, Constellation? I mean, which one is going to actually be able to do all of this, and which one is actually going to contract for launch services? And so at the end of the day, I couldn't find a better way to do it other than go to the FCC, look at their filing applications, because everyone has to file, everyone has to put a claim in for the spectrum. So we went and we looked, and I think of the 27, every one of them insisted that they would have at least 25% market share. And that told me something, that their eyes were bigger than certainly the market stomach. And that had implications for the launch industry. So we started to work backwards from there. At the same time that was happening, how many of you remember something called Project Oxygen or Project Flag? The only guy. Come on, everyone. Yeah, this is dangerous. I mean, this really is dangerous. This is the most invasive. It was kind of like the clams that fill the Chesapeake Bay. All of a sudden, this product that we thought only could be served by satellite services, all of a sudden there became this idea called fiber, undersea fiber cable. So my assessment at that time for banks was this is a very dangerous area to invest in because there's uncertainty, and the time to launch, the time to production, the time to investment versus the time you can lay fiber, there's a differentiation there, and I'm telling you what, space isn't going to win it. And then you add latency. Who remembers the whole fear of latency, which ends up not being that big of a deal, but at the time, when you're looking at trying to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, is a big deal. So would I rather lay fiber, or would I rather launch a satellite and take a runner? Also, if I lay fiber, I'm investing short term. And then I have to know I have to make capital improvements. And this is a very important thing for the Department of Defense to understand. And it's something we really don't get yet. Gravity is free. So all of our investment for this product, unlike almost every product we have, a ship, a tank, everything we invest in this product for space comes up front. Once we launch it, gravity's free. And we're not used to dealing with a product like that. We're not very good at it, to be honest with you. And so it's a new paradigm. And this has happened over the last 15, 20 years, and we're still grappling with it. And we're still trying to understand what other market forces could come in to replicate the need for our requirement for space. And I won't even get into the unless we get into it in the Q&A about disaggregation and the reliance we have on different space assets. But what I'm trying to communicate to you is that the U.S. government, up until I honestly believe 3 or 4 years ago, was somewhat deaf to the commercial marketplace and understanding how the commercial marketplace was transforming an industry that we rely upon. We absolutely rely upon, but we weren't taking advantage of it. And I give a lot of credit to, back then, the first initiative of Secretary Gates and then following Secretary Panetta, and certainly Dr. Carter, to make that transition as it relates to the launch side of things. How do we introduce competition to launch? How do we agree that the world has changed and we need to change with it, and not try to defend static or status quo positions that we had in the past, which were perfectly justified at the time, but understand that the market has transformed and that we need to move with the market. And at the end of the day, again, the market tends to work unless we don't allow it to work. So I think DoD has made tremendous strides. I'm very proud of the ADM and the different announcements that Mr. Kendall has put out recently about opening particularly certain segments of the launch industry. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, one of which is where space plays and the overall role of our desires and needs, and how do we inculcate, if you will, space applications with the overall needs and requirements that relate to fiber, relate to everything else we're doing in the backbone of communications. At the end of the day, our requirement is reliability. We all know who is the most reliable launch provider. There's no question about it. But how do you introduce new reliability if you're not willing to take a chance? And the challenge we have as a department is, we've asked folks to step up and raise their hand to say who's a non-essential payload. Well, in this budget environment, who's going to do that? I wouldn't. Everything's essential. So we have challenges still ahead of us, particularly in this sector, and how we introduce competition over time. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that competition is a good thing. We've seen the results already. I think it helps both private industry and the government, frankly. There's a lot of things private industry, in my 20 years experience in the private sector, I would not do unless the government told me to do it. And once they told me to do it, I would do it, and I guarantee you I could do it better than any competitor that would come before me. And I think that's the apex where we're at right now, particularly in the launch sector. So there's no shortage of challenges. There's a shortage of money. Please ask me a question about sequestration. I'll tell you all the implications that's having. Imagine doing 80% of a payload, 80% of a launch vehicle. It's embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing what we're having to do. And I think the longer term result was it's going to cost us a lot more at the end of the day to fix all of these. The good news is, because of what we started to do in the department 3 or 4 years ago to get long-term contracts, multi-year contracts, that's actually helped a lot. And I'm very happy that we were able to get Congress's approval to do these multi-years, because that does, from the industrial base point of view, the industrial supplier point of view, it certainly helps stabilize the base over the coming years. But the challenge is really going to be in 15 and 16. If this continues, we have a real challenge with our industrial base, and particularly the key suppliers that we have at the second, third, and fourth tiers. And I'm happy to talk about what we're doing in the department to monitor that and to manage that. I give a lot of credit to the primes because they're helping us on this. But it's going to be a real challenge. There is no good news, which is why I ordered the weather that we have out here today. It's a bad news story in terms of the future of what we're going to be able to do in the launch sector without some stabilization in the budget environment. So with that happy note,
thank you, Brett.
Turn it over to you.